Hi everyone, this is Leanne and this is From the Heart. And today I have a special guest. I found some pistol shooter winner guy. Okay, he's my friend, which is why it's funny to have him. Remi Doucet is someone who is a competitive pistol shooter, a hunter, and a firearm enthusiast. And I know that it doesn't look like it's online with what I like to talk about. Like I talk so much about healthcare and health, but like another really kind of common thing in my podcast is to be always a little bit skeptical about what we are taught and what is culturally normalized. And I think it's nice to kind of get back to facts and see what's working for us in our country. And because I've went from something that was labeled as like left wing is what I'll call myself before. And then I was open to having discussions. That doesn't mean that anyone I talk to and all that is right winged, but it's just that because I had a more open mind and curiosity, I've learned a lot. And I've had discussions with beyond just you, Remi, and I'm just like, whoa, like we need to have these discussions so that we're better informed when it comes to making our politicians and whoever else is an expert in making laws and making us and our world safer. And so this is just the beginning of a conversation. I'm just here to learn. And thank you, Remi, a lot for being here. And can you tell us about yourself and explain what your sport is and why you're a
firearms enthusiast?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. So, I mean, my background, I suppose, I've always been, exposed to firearms my whole life. My dad was an RCMP officer and a hunter, and so at a very young age, even he's 10 years old, he's giving me a little 22 rifle to go hunt rabbits with him, kind of thing. And it was bringing me into his hobby and his heritage and stuff. That's something that him and his family have always done. So I mean, I've kind of grew up around guns and firearms. I mean, to me, it was just a very normal thing, right? The safety aspect of it was very well communicated to me. And so, yeah, I hunted with my dad for many years. Even as I got older, I mean, I always had kind of an interest in it. And once I kind of graduated and had a bit of time and money and had a job and things like that, I quickly joined a shooting range in Ottawa. So got my firearms license, got my bought my first firearms and things like that, and then was just kind of Monday night going to the range and as a fun activity, just recreationally going to shoot on the line with other people at the range. And then that grew, and through, I guess, the firearm community, I met other all kinds of other people. Like I mean, firearms, it's almost like the same thing as if you started playing golf or tennis or something. You start meeting other people that are just really passionate about the sport they do, right? And so in this case it's firearms, but you meet great people, and through them they showed me the sport is called IPSC, so International Practical Shooting Confederation. And I had a coworker actually that was doing this sport. He showed me a video not long after I had joined the range and had my first firearm, and he was like, oh, it was running around an obstacle course shooting at targets in a timed course, and it just looked really, really amazing. As soon as I saw that video, I was like, why aren't I doing this? It just looks really cool. And you could see he was explaining to me all the safety. There was range officers and everything. The rules were very strict around safety. If at any point in time you were doing something unsafe or pointing the gun in the wrong direction or something, they would immediately stop you. There was a person always within arm's length of use. I mean, and even to just start the sport, you had to take an extra qualification, and there's all kinds of regulations and hoops to jump through, but it ensures people are safe in doing these kind of things. And I think that's kind of the key. That this is the key concept that's centered around, I think, all things firearms. So even if you're hunting, it's like you do hunting safety courses and things like that. Like they always want to make sure that you have the people that are doing these things know what they're doing. They're kind of vetted and approved to be doing these things. And as long as all that's followed, it makes the sport, makes all these activities very safe, right? So so then with that, I mean, I've been doing my sport, my competitive shooting for over 15 years now. I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've traveled abroad with this. I've competed in many different places in the world. And most recently just came back from South Africa, actually doing the world shoot. So that was kind of the equivalent of our Olympics, right? But like a really high level match, and just a really great experience to do. And we had an entire contingent of Canadians that went, and it was a great time for about 2 weeks. So
nice. You've been doing it for so long. And every time I've asked you a question, which is why like I having you on the podcast, you always have these like really elaborate, very detailed answers, and like you're meant to be on my podcast. Like the next question I want to ask you is like, can you tell us about what needs to happen for someone to legally own firearm in Canada?
Right. Yeah, the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, starting from zero, I mean, we have a firearms licensing program. So it's called a PAL, so a possession acquisition license. And so that's essentially a license, not unlike once you have a driver's license, you can drive a car. Well, when you have that license, you can go out and purchase and legally possess certain classes of firearms. So normally you need to do there's like a weekend course. So that's offered. So say in Ottawa, the RA Center offers that, but there's many different places all across Canada. There's centers and places like that will periodically, maybe even once a month, like offer these kind of courses. So it's like a Saturday, Sunday kind of thing all day. In class are teaching you about how firearms work, and the safety aspect of it, and even like the laws and things like what you have to do when you do own them, from A to Z, all that stuff. There's written tests, there's practical exams, so they'll have mock firearms in the class as well, and they'll even get you to handle them to show, they're one of the big things is, can you safely unload and show that a firearm is safe, and all that kind of stuff. So proper handling, written tests, and I think you have to pass those exams with a minimum, I believe it's 80% or more. So it's not just 50% and you're good to go, right? Like it's more than that. So you do the course, and you then, after that, once you pass all your exams and everything, you can submit all of that along with a form to the RCMP, they're ultimately the ones who will issue the license. So you submit the form. On your form, you have to indicate references. So you have to get, I believe it's at least 2 people, and they have to know you for at least 3 years, and they cannot be your family, right? So it kind of eliminates a bit of bias there. So you have to find someone who, like a friend or someone like you, right, who's known me for more than 3 years. Say like, hey, do you want to be my reference? And then I put you down on the form, submit that. Later on, the RCMP, there's a bit of a waiting period. They check me out, background checks. They make sure I'm not a criminal or anything in the system. They will call me. They'll ask me questions like about my history. They'll ask me questions like, have you ever been on medications, or have you ever had suicidal thoughts? Have you ever, like kind of questions that would check your kind of mental state, right? And then they will also call your references, and they'll ask you the same questions, right, about me. It's like, hey, has he ever taken, I don't know, like, has he been diagnosed with a mental illness or something? Has he ever been, does he get angry easy or something like that, right? Like those kind of questions. They're checking, they vet the person out. And so if all that passes, then you're, the RCMP will say, okay, this person has been checked, is vetted, he's not a criminal, he's, has at least 2 people that say he's safe, then okay, you get a firearms license. And that process from start to finish, from the time you do the course to the time you actually get the license in the mail, it takes about a year, right? Just all the waiting and the submitting and the delays and things like that. So you even get a license, like you kind of got to be someone that is dedicated, right? It's not something that happens in like 2 weeks. So that in itself kind of weeds out certain people that, if you're really not that interested, okay, well then you won't go through the process. But finally, once you get it, then that's the hard part. It's kind of becomes like a driver's license. You renew it every 5 years kind of thing, right? And interestingly enough too, I mean, even I think in the original form to to apply to become a firearms license owner. And even when you renew, like recently I just renewed, and on the renewal application, I had to state like I'm married. And so I did put my wife down on there, right? And they would say, like, they even mentioned, like, is your wife okay with you renewing your firearms license? And they said that they reserve the right to call her to kind of validate that, right? So I think that's even valid too. I think if you have past partners, I think, a couple of years, it goes back a couple of years kind of thing. So you'd have to notify those people too. So I mean, it's all across the way, right? Like this whole path, like it's very, the steps they're taking are, in my view, are reasonable, right? You should be vetting people to this degree. And so as a result, you become like legal firearm owners are among the most vetted civilians in society, in my view, right? As a result of all these steps. Like I don't, like, I'm not aware of any other, normal licensing application for anything else in normal day-to-day life that requires this level of scrutiny kind of thing, right?
That's cool. Yeah, like it's good to know that that's like the process, because people can have very against kind of opinions, and I think it's like reassuring to hear that it is that thorough. Do they check your mental health again, like every 5 years? Like do they ask about that, or?
No, I mean, I think once, kind of from the onset, like once they've kind of checked you out the first time, it's a pretty rigorous thing. So no, they don't check your mental outlook again. I mean, unless, but there is something called the continuous eligibility system, I think it's called. So our names, as a result of becoming firearm owners, right? We're in a register. There's this system that I think every day is just going through that whole register of names and is kind of checking to see, like, has this person committed a crime, or has this person been, is there any flags? I think also like a doctor or something like that can also put a flag in like that, right? Like if you've been diagnosed with something like severe mental something, I think there are avenues that allow that to be flagged. So I mean, again, like you're not just vetted from the initial licensing side of things. We're vetted every single day. So if I go out and commit a crime, right? If I go, I don't know, like rob a bank or something, or, aggravated battery assault or something, like some major crime, like that will show up in the system. That continuous eligibility system is going to like see that, it flags you, and then all of a sudden, well, when you're flagged, sends like a notice to police being like, this guy's license is now revoked, and it may involve police showing up at your door to collect your guns or something. Some repercussions are going to happen that way. So so by default, we cannot be a criminal, and we cannot be like, mentally unstable, right? Like it usually kind of weeds out that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
And like you're pointing out, like, a lot of everything I just mentioned around getting your license and all this kind of stuff, like the vast majority of Canadians who haven't gone through this process, who are not firearm owners, like they don't know this stuff. Like they think, we're so close to the United States, and they just see what happens in the States. And in some places in the States, it's almost akin to like, oh, you turn 18. Oh, well, now you just show up to, you can show up to Walmart and go buy a gun, right? It makes it sound like, oh, we must be like that. Not at all. We're like the furthest thing in terms of how the States are, right? So
yeah. When I was talking to people about guns and getting a little bit prepared for this episode, people are like, is it because of what's happening on the news? And like right now I'm not watching the news. And can you just like tell us what's happening on the news and what's happening with guns and why there's a thing about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're kind of right to ask you about that, because there is a lot that's happening in the news about firearms, right? Like, so it kind of all goes back to 2020. So just around pandemic time, I think it was May 2020 was when the government instilled a ban on many different types of firearms, around something like, I think we're now somewhere around 202,500 different models plus of rifles that have been banned, mostly semi-automatic rifles. So that was a direct response to a mass shooting that happened in Nova Scotia, Baltic, Nova Scotia. There was a person that essentially had obtained a firearm illegally, they shot
Illegally?
illegally.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they obtained a firearm illegally, and they shot a police officer. They took the police officer's firearms, and then I think they also took the uniform, impersonated the police officer, and then drove around. Then also, committing more crimes, like shooting other people. Right. So that was a terrible event. In response to that, very, very soon after that massacre, the police responded. This was the federal government's response to this was to implicate this ban, and this ban was exclusively for legal firearm owners. They were saying they're banning legal firearms, right? So semi-automatic rifles and what they coined the term assault style weapons, right? Like, so a black scary rifle that looks military in nature. They said, oh, we don't need these, we're going to get these off the streets. Well, in what they banned, I mean, so I'll back up a little bit. Like the person that committed that massacre, that person was not a legal firearm owner. They never were, and they obtained their guns illegally. But at the time when they were doing the ban, this information was not public yet, but they kind of responded off of that. So then later on, of course, when the facts came to light and things like that, it was questioned as to why, and even is questioned as to why are we banning these firearms? Because now it only affects legal firearm owners. It doesn't actually affect criminals. And so, when they initially banned these firearms, they said, okay, well, we're going to ban them, and we're going to give you a 2-year amnesty period. They're going to figure out a buyback program. So they were going to buy these guns back from the legal firearm owners that had them. And so 2 years elapsed. They couldn't really figure out how to do this. And now we're 5 years later. And then now they've extended, actually this month, they decided to extend another year. So it's going to be 6 years since the initial ban that these guns have been banned, but now they haven't been collected. And the federal government is having all kinds of pushback from police services and the public and a lot of people involved, because to paint the big picture of things, where does gun crime actually come from? I think the statistics are clear that it's all firearms coming from across the border illegally, right? Everybody forgets that Canada has the largest land border in the world with the country that has the most amount of guns in the world. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't actually matter if you ban every single legal firearm in Canada and get them off and get them away from civilians, you will, in practical terms, have zero effect on gun crime. Because I think a statistic I saw recently was in 2024, like the Toronto Police Service, they said of the guns that they had seized in 2024, the 88% that they were able to trace back was traced back to crossing the border illegally. 88%, right? And that, of course, doesn't mean that the other 12% comes from legal sources. That just means 88% were able to be traced back. So in a lot of cases when crime guns, it's like the serial number could be filed off, or there's you can't figure out really where it came from because it was modified or some other means. So the other 12% doesn't mean it came from legal sources. It just means they couldn't trace it back to something. So really 88% could be a lot higher. And in fact, we generally believe it is. So, and in addition to that, I mean, what the federal government banned was mostly rifles, pretty much essentially all rifles. And yet, again, the statistics show that the vast majority of gun crimes committed with handguns, illegal handguns crossing the border. So I guess all of the pushback, all of what's happening in the news, and especially since it's been 5 years plus, there's more and more people that are kind of seeing what this really is and saying that, okay, the government is banning these guns. They're going to spend, I think they said, $750 million to buy these guns back from us and to try and implement this program. Nobody wants it, and everyone's starting to see, well, this will actually not do anything to help public safety, right? You are attacking, how is taking guns away from the good guys going to stop the bad guys? That's really the crux of the whole thing. And the government's not able to answer that. They still believe that we're just getting guns off the streets, so they say. But in reality, I mean, like, the statistics don't back it up. The facts do not support what this is happening, and really, it just feels like, the government is going after sort of the easy low-hanging fruit to get votes, is what it feels like, right? Mm-hmm. It feels very much like a political agenda kind of a situation. And so legal firearm owners who understand the nuances of all this stuff and understand the facts, like, we feel like we're being unfairly targeted. So that's kind of the big picture of it.
Yeah, the people who are safe and the people who follow the rules and were really careful are the ones who are being targeted, and the guns on the street are not the ones that are hidden in someone's locker thing, and and they're the ones on the street, the little handguns, I guess, that you can hide on your body.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's right. Like, our firearms, they stay locked in our basement. Like, they're not the ones that are causing a problem. Case in point, if you've banned all these different firearms, supposedly those firearms have stayed in our safes all this time, and yet gun crime has not gone down, right? So I mean, even you've had 5 years to even make a case argument against that or for that banning, and it doesn't hold, right? I mean, like, gun crime has been increasing since, I think, 2013 up to a high of 2022, as far as some of the stats show. And it's increased over 50% since 2013 timeline, right? And so, and even you would think that 5 years is a decent amount of time to start to see some sort of decline, and it hasn't shown. Yeah. So, I mean, now as time goes on, it seems to prove more and more that what the government's doing is not justified.
I had an episode on homicide, and it was specific to the violence against women, with Emily, like, a long time ago, and she was saying that the homicide rate towards women, so like so the ones in relationship, basically, what increased because of lockdowns, and like, because when the lockdowns would unlock, I guess, or whatever, they would change, there'd be less restrictions on women, and then the partners that have issues with violence would start, like, there would be, and she saw a peak of homicide when lockdowns were opening up again. And then she also said that with the increase in profit that we're seeing, and or shrinkflation, whatever we want to call it, like the increase in price and everything, it's locking. It's inflation. Thank you. Yeah. It's locking women into relationships and increasing the rate of homicide. So it's interesting to kind of like see it, because I saw Remi's, like, the stats that you pulled up, and then also kind of connecting it with what Emily had been seeing. So there's like things that we're not looking at and putting all together, like from a perspective of social worker, and then like the gun, like, it's all kind of like, it's really not cool. It's not cool. It's just really interesting to see. Yeah, exactly. To link it all together. Let me just see what other questions I had there for you.
Yeah, kind of jumped ahead a bit in some of the stuff.
Yeah.
I guess it all links together a little bit, right? It kind of flows. So.
Was there a time when, like, gun regulations and like violence with guns was at an all-time low and linked to something?
I mean, from what I saw, it was kind of coming back to that StatsCan, some of that data, they're showing like a low at around 2013 time frame. That seems to correspond with I guess speaking why the reason why it started to increase from then. So I guess that was a safe time, 2013, and then after that it increased like pretty much every year until 2022.
So the Stats Canada is really behind like a few years, so we just don't have the stats for the next year.
Right. Yeah, it stops at 2023. So I mean, we don't have
2024
and all that. So that's kind of where it ends. That's valid to say, right? And so yeah, speaking to why it kind of went up, there's an article that was talking about that you'll post on your links there, but it's talking about how police, I guess the policies around policing were changing. So around 2020, 2012, there's some notable discussions that were happening at the federal level and provincial level that they now started to see the budgets around policing as a bit of a burden. So they started, rather than seeing it as kind of like upholding these budgets and upholding certain policing resources and things, to kind of see it as a public safety, to uphold public safety, I suppose. So then budgets got tighter. Staffing was maybe affected and that kind of thing. So the ultimate result of that is that, well, with less policing resources and things like that, of course, you're going to have an increase in crime. There's also another big factor, is that the bail reform laws were changed. So Bill C-75, I think nicknamed as kind of the catch and release law, that came into force around 2019, and that was basically, it made it easier to release violent repeat offenders. So they would commit a crime, they would get caught, and then those laws would kind of try and prioritize, essentially, like, try to not just incarcerate people for incarcerating people there. So even pre-trial, there would be a mechanism for trying to release these people early. And so it just made for lax laws around that. And so that probably contributed to just violent repeat offenders can commit a crime, get caught, and then sometimes days later get released and they just reoffend again. I mean, on paper, it sounded like a good idea to try and say help people that maybe have committed crimes, to try and get them out of that. But then there's just people that don't want to be helped, right? Like, they'll just keep being a criminal, and so that has not shown it to be very good. In the years since its inception. There's been actually a lot of criticism on that in the news actually recently. I think the government is now, they've introduced, I think, changes to those laws or amendments to those laws, but those amendments kind of still fall short a lot. So it's a number of factors that probably certainly way more factors than what I just mentioned that impact the increase in crime rate. But I think those are kind of two notable ones that stand out to me anyways.
Yeah, I actually know for a fact that people will choose a crime or something to do that has the least amount of time stay in the jail. So like they actually know all these rules. They're smart. They know all these rules and they know what to do and what will let them kind of a bit like the auto theft that's happening. They're just in and out. So like they do stay on top of these things. They're smart people.
Sure, yeah.
And then I had
gaming the system, I guess.
Yeah, they just know how to use the system, basically.
Yeah. So I mean that, and if you're just trying to, if you have someone's just trying to game the system, like, really, how effective are your laws, right? You shouldn't make a law that allows someone to do that, right? Like, if their intent really is that bad, like, no, you shouldn't like allow someone that escape route, right?
The other thing that I was thinking is just our culture. And like, it was in June, there was a young man who killed someone who worked for a health insurance company in the States, and he shot it like really close. He got really close to him and shot him, and it's all on camera, and we saw it over and over again. And then like, there's a certain culture that saw him as a hero. And I think that we are culprits of making that sort of culture as, I'm going to kill this person who is associated with a company that's bad, and he's just going to his job. He has a family, maybe, anyone has a family, and then we're going and doing that, and we think that makes that person a hero. That's like reinforcing that loop of like, I'm going to do something really bad, but I'm going to be seen as a hero, and the lawyers are going to like fight for me because the jail conditions are really bad, because that's what also was on the news, is the lawyers decided to not fight against or like talk about what he had just done, but they decided to fight with the jail conditions that he was going to be put in after doing that monstrosity of a crime.
Right.
Anyways, it's just like things that are, as you're speaking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we need to start taking accountability for what we encourage too, right?
Yeah. I mean, in that example, like, I know what you're talking about. I forget forget the kid's name, but yeah, he killed
Yeah, it's a kid, but still, he's an adult.
He was like I think he was in his 20s or something like that, but he shot a insurance CEO, right? And I guess that's the result of, I think, more than one problem, right? Like the greed and the cost of living and difficulties and things we've seen, especially in the last few years. Like it exacerbated that to a boiling point, and that person saw this as getting revenge, right, on a piece of what the system had done to him, kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot of
things that we need to look at.
Yeah.
And do you know more about what's happening at the border?
Yes. I mean, I have a friend who works in CBSA, and he tells me, I mean, essentially, the long and short of it is that we don't have enough resources at the border. Kind of coming back to the fact that, again, Canada has the largest land border in the world. I think it's something at 9,000 kilometers of border. Like, it's an insane amount of, I think people kind of forget that, right? To properly have the resources and things, like you'd almost, like, CBSA would almost need to be a small army that would rival other countries' armies, what I mean, just to be able to properly police things. It's so I mean, I have my friend who tells me sometimes, like, they have cameras along the border, and they'll see, say, an infrared camera that's showing, there's a couple trucks that are, like, driving across the border somewhere in some wilderness part of Canada, but they look on the camera and say, that's 40 kilometers away, we'll never get there in time, so they don't even try, right? Like, who knows what those trucks are bringing across, but, like, they don't have the time, resources, or energy to go and actually stop those people. Like, it's a matter of resources. It's a matter of it's a matter of a lot of things. I mean, and again, kind of, this is another thing, kind of circling back a little bit to the money that the federal government has said they're going to spend on this buyback. This is like $750 million is what they've currently allocated, which by some estimates that could be much, much more by the time you're actually finished. Could be a couple billion or more. Like the main argument is, well, that money could be, why don't you put that money towards border efforts, right? Like, where the actual problem is. Like, $750 million could pay for a lot more CBSA agents, could pay for a lot more, scanning equipment, could pay for a lot of things, could really help, could actually make a meaningful impact. So that's, that's one of the main arguments that's kind of around that. And I mean, of course, there's other problems at the border. But yeah, it kind of sums it up largely like that, right? Not enough resources.
Yeah, a lot of people are, like, concerned about AI taking your jobs and things like that. But, like, what if AI could, because it's a dangerous job to be in any type of security job, and so why can't we kind of invest in AI? Like, that's my line of thought, basically.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I can't say I know too much about that.
Yeah, me neither. Because I'm like, if AI can do everything, why don't they do that?
I mean, there probably is some application for AI at the border, but I don't know. To be honest, I'd just be guessing if I tried to say something right now. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sticking to the facts.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Do you have opinions on what could decrease gun violence? We kind of touched on it. I thought, like, inflation and like what was happening with, revenge and corporations and things like that. But any other things?
I mean, I think, like, kind of speaking back to the whole licensing process of things, right? Like, I think putting efforts into that, like, kind of vetting people from the mental health side, or doing what you can to make sure that when you decide to give a license to someone, that you have a high degree of certainty that this person will be a law-abiding person, that they will adhere. There's a big responsibility that comes with having firearms, right? And you have to just make sure that the people that you allow to have firearms are going to respect and adhere to that kind of responsibility. I mean, that's one thing. The other thing is again, like, the border, and right, like you know, stemming the flow of guns, and stemming, trying to do things to stop like organized crime and that kind of stuff, right? So, I mean, and that's kind of a big thing. Like, even coming back to, before 2020, I mean, we were safe, right? Like I wouldn't have said that there really was a problem with, at least not, gun crime on the as related to legal firearm owners, right? I mean, there's always border issues, but so I mean, I think that's where kind of things could be improved
Yeah.
more so, right?
Another question is, do you have any opinions on like child rearing and guns and like video games and things like that? Because you grew up in a place where like a gun was a tool, it was for hunting, and it came with a lot of responsibility and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like kind of the classic argument of like, oh, if you play, Call of Duty or something like that, oh, there's shoot 'em up games, like, oh, they're going to be violent. Like, no, I don't think that argument holds at all. I mean, I don't know, like I grew up playing those games too, and I'm not a criminal. I don't do bad things. Um, but the thing, like I grew up with a father who was a police officer, hunter, and everything. Like he at a young age he showed me guns, but he showed me responsibility with it too, right? He would immediately tell me like, what I needed to do, how to be safe with it. And so I think it's all in how you approach it. There's, firearms is such an emotional thing to a lot of people, right? Like, especially if you don't know anything about it and you just see it, like you just think, oh, it's this instrument that kills. Well, I mean, it's all in how you think about it, right? Like, I mean, what if, it's like when you go to your kitchen and you make supper, while your chef knife is a pretty sharp knife, right? Like that can kill people, but that's not what you're thinking about, right? It's a tool that you've been taught to safely use, and you use it to that end, right? But it's anything can be a weapon, but you don't think about it that way. Well, that's kind of how I am with firearms too, right? I don't think of it like a weapon, right? For me, in my sport, it's just the tool that I use to do my sport. It's like if I was a baseball player, like that, I'm pretty sure I could beat someone's head in with a bat, but I'm like, I don't think about that, or the baseball player's not thinking about that. They're thinking about hitting the ball and like actually doing their sport. So it's just a mindset thing, right? And if you're, in terms of, kids and things like that, like it's you show them the right way, you show them what the mindset should be, along with the responsibility and the safety. And I don't see that as a problem, right? And in fact, like I have young kids now, and of course they're too young now to participate in my sport or anything like that, but I'm waiting until they get a little bit older, and I'll be more than happy to show them all this kind of stuff. Like I'm actually like excited for the day where I can bring them to the range and we can go just shoot, for fun recreationally, and like I can try and get them to see the enjoyment and like the fun of doing what I love with them, right? Like, and so there's not going to be, they're going to understand the safety and all this kind of stuff, but there's not going to be this like fear around it, right? And I think that's kind of what a lot of people like think it is, but that's not what I would aim to portray, right?
Yeah, that's a good answer. I like it. It's like basically you're saying like lead by example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what my dad did for me, and like it works. And so I don't see a problem with kids being brought up the same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are basically my questions, are like around the gun stuff. There's just like questions I ask people at the end of my podcast. The first one is just because quality relating and or building community are really related to having better quality of life. Do you have examples of how you do that for yourself and that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that like I mentioned before, like the firearm is a community, right? And especially even joining my sport of IPSC, like that's an even more niche community kind of thing, right? And because of that, it's enabled me to travel, within Canada and abroad to all kinds of other countries, many times with other Canadians that I just met through matches. Like I have friends in BC and Nova Scotia, Quebec, everywhere, and it's all a result of these matches that we go. Like, every year. Every year we travel for nationals, and it's a different province every year. So, I get to go, and it's all usually the same group of people. It's a small group of people, right? So, relatively speaking, but you meet all these people from different walks of life, and it builds this network, and it builds like, and because everyone's like a vetted, civilian, essentially, because of this process, right? That they're a good person. They're you can almost have a high degree of confidence that they're respectable and they're on the level, and but it certainly has made a big difference in my life, right? To have that kind of experience. And I mean, even speaking recently, going to South Africa for the World Shoot, I mean, we're a group of five guys in an Airbnb and shooting this match, and we're people that we've traveled with for years, and we just had a great time. And I think it enriches our life to have something like that, right? So yeah, I don't know, I've just been doing it so long, and it's brought me so much that one reason too why I would be sad if things kept getting banned and I couldn't do my sport anymore, right? Like, it actually would take away like a really big part of my life that has brought me a lot of joy and enjoyment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And it's like, we need to also realize how important competition is for men, for their health, especially too. Like, the building community, definitely for everyone, but we need to start valuing competition, because men and their testosterone levels are so important for their health, and have an appreciation for that sort of thing too, especially playing it rather than just watching it, even though watching it can increase your testosterone levels, but playing is important for men and boys. And then the other question that I asked is, how does your intuition feel for you, and where has it led you in your life when you've listened to it?
My intuition, I mean, yeah, I guess I've kind of just naturally flowed. Just naturally always flowed towards doing this competitive stuff, and I guess everybody has, probably, I would like to think everyone has like a natural sense of kind of what they should be doing in life. And I guess for some reason this sport and this activity just kind of called to me, right? I don't know if it's also as a result of just being introduced to it so young, but I always kind of was fascinated and always just kind of wanted to do more with it. And I don't know, it's always just driven me to go in that direction. So I guess that's it's expanded me as a result, right? So
yeah, because like this is it's such a weird sport, right? Because it's not something, I've never met anyone else who I don't mean weird, it's a rare sport.
We're all weird.
We're all weird.
We're all weird.
So and it's cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Was there anything else you like that we didn't kind of cover that you were hoping that we would?
No, I mean, maybe just to generally say, like, for anyone kind of listening to this and, not really knowing anything about firearms in general, or, especially in relation to what's going on with the news, and you're kind of like, well, what is all this stuff? Just, look it up, get educated, right? Like, I think it's one thing to just kind of easily say, oh, whatever, it's guns, just shrug it off to the side. But, I mean, if it were anything else, like me, you would be curious about it, and you would want to know, like, well, what are the facts around it? Like, what are they really doing? And just to kind of, because that's the big thing, right? Like, misinformation, and that's a lot of what, the government, for example, who wants to try and has their own agenda, wants to try and accomplish something, you kind of want to say, well, what are they really doing? Is it actually going to do what they say it's going to do? And to try and like look at the facts and look at, rather than just let them kind of pull the wool over your eyes and let them make you believe what they want you to believe. Like, well, look at the facts and try and get educated. So they take advantage of the fact that there's that lack of education understanding around it to try and like kind of twist things to their advantage.
Yeah.
And
they're taking advantage of our fear and our reactivity around it.
Yeah. And my question to you would be to say, well, if they are taking advantage of your lack of information on this subject, like what are they doing on something else, right? Like that means they're willing to do the same kind of thing on a different subject, right? Just to kind of benefit them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Remi. I love learning from you.
Well,
hopefully this sparks good conversation and better awareness on this topic so that we can become a country where the stats of crime decline rather than continue to increase.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And I think you talk to any firearm owner, they will kind of understand all this kind of stuff. So they see what's really out there. So it's disheartening to us to see kind of what's happening, right? Like why? Like it's not justified. So we want it to be safer too, right? Like so.
Yeah. And thank you for listening.